Um, there's veiled images of things that the Romans could read and say, well, you're saying this, and they didn't want the Romans to know what they were talking about. And it may be for the future, they don't want them to know about it. I'm not going to name names. I'm just telling you, this is what's going to happen, and you have to be smart enough to know this is what I'm talking about. Now, it may also be, and this is what I've heard Bible prophecy teachers teach, that in the last days, the temple will be rebuilt, and the Antichrist will come into the temple of God, and he'll stand there, and then the Great Tribulation is going to take place. That's possible because it's cyclical. It's a contraction. And it could be that happens at an intense time in the last. And it may not even be in the temple itself, but on the temple grounds. I find it fascinating that the Dome of the Rock stands on the Temple Mount right now. I think that's an amazing sacrilege to the Jewish religion, to us, But to the Jewish religion, for the Dome of the Rock to stand on the Jewish holy temple grounds is something that's very strange. It may play a part in these last days with all that's going to take place. It says, let those that are in Judea, notice what he talks about. He's talking about there locally. Judea was their province. Flee to the mountains. Run for your lives. Let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house. Now remember, they had flat roofs and they would go up on the housetop for different things. But if you see that, and you see them come into that city, and you see them head to the temple, you don't even go down to get your coat. It says, neither enter therein to take anything out of the house, and let him that is in the field not turn back to take up his garment. If you're out in the field, you see it taking place, you better run. Just leave everything and run. Man, that's a devastating idea, isn't it? That it's going to be that bad that Jesus said, when you see it, you better run. He said, but woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. Those that are pregnant, those that have infants or newborns. You could see where that would be a terrible thing to just run for your life in that condition. And he says, and pray that your flight be not in the winter. You can understand how it would be, and you don't even have time to go get your coat. But he says, run. Don't go get your coat, run. Even if it's wintertime. He said, pray that it doesn't happen in the wintertime. He says in verse 19, and in those days shall be affliction such as was not from the beginning of the creation which God created unto this time, neither shall be. Now here's the thing. If he's talking about the end of time, he's talking about a great tribulation that will happen at the end, that will be worse than anything that's ever happened in human history. In the immediate, he could be talking about Jerusalem, and it's the worst thing that Jerusalem has ever experienced. The worst destruction, the worst mass murder that took place in Jerusalem, worse than anything the Babylonians did to them. But it's possible also that we read again in the book of Revelations how bad things are going to be in the last day when, if the population stays as it is now, you're talking about billions of people are going to die. And so Jesus, whatever the case, Jesus is saying that this is going to be the worst thing that's ever happened. Well, to Jerusalem, that was the worst thing that had ever happened to Jerusalem, and has happened to Jerusalem since then. There's never been a time when Jerusalem has suffered like they suffered that day. But it also seems to be talking about the end when the final days come before Christ comes back. He says in verse 20, and except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days. So, on both accounts, if you think about the Christians that were in Jerusalem at the time, and there were Christians there, God stopped it before it became an annihilation, because he protected his chosen ones. And in the end, it may be that God stops it. Maybe he means by that he carries them out of the way. Because if he didn't, there'd be such destruction there. But God's going to keep a handle on it to where it doesn't get to the place to where it goes beyond what He allows it to go. And He protects His people in the midst of all of that. So some of these things are very shady, they're hard to see, but we know that these things are coming, and we need to be aware of these things. Let's stop right there, and we'll pick up with the rest of it the next time. Are there any comments or questions before we go on?